Watch this.
It's Friday. You know what that means? It's time to wrap up the week here on the 208. Here's what we got for you. The Idaho legislature is in recess until next week, so we are taking a look at where some of the biggest topics for the session stand, what passed, what is maybe on the docket for next year. One of the pieces of legislation, though, that is much talked about, one about harmful materials in libraries, restricting minors and their access. It's in the hands of the governor now. He vetoed a similar bill last year. What is the fate of this one going to be? In Idaho's budgeting committee, they introduced a plan this session to simplify how they go through the budgeting process, but not all lawmakers were on board. And one Republican from Ada County, he's now paying the consequences after his Central Committee says they're disappointed. Here we are, the end of the week, one that is marked by Idaho lawmakers essentially wrapping up their business for the year. And as the dust settles on the final week, we're getting the final lay of the land. And I have personally reviewed the 208 inbox, a lot of great questions from you about where things landed. Most common comments this week, though, it centers on the Idaho transportation budget. Lawmakers included language in the budget for ITD that blocks a sale of the State Street campus in Boise. ITD had decided to sell it for millions, almost $52 million actually. Some in the legislature, though, they didn't want to part with that parcel. They think it'll grow in value despite needed repairs. Others didn't want to go back on a deal that was basically done. But like many of you, Bob wrote into us about what happens next, saying hashtag the 208. Does the governor still have the line item veto power in appropriation bills? If so, could he veto the sale, killing language in the ITD appropriation? That's Bob in Boise. So not the line item, but Governor Little could veto the whole thing, although that would kind of be a big reset stamp on the session. But where do we go from here either way? To wrap up the week, let's dive into the ITD sale, the final result for Idaho launch, and where immigration legislation landed. The dust settles on the legislative Wild West. Oh, it's a ghost town down at the State House to end the week. Idaho lawmakers, they headed back home to reflect on what they did or did not do. Depends who you ask. But the final week, so to speak, it marked a block of the ITD Campus Sale in Boise. If Governor Little signs the appropriation bill for the Transportation Department, lawmakers, they'll call it a year. And that ITD sale, the campus on State Street, it's blocked. But if the governor vetoes the concept, maybe the best way to describe it, chaos? I guess we'll see. But the prospective buyers of the campus seem to be preparing for the governor's signature blocking the sale. In a letter sent to the Department of Administration in March, it's made clear by the prospective buyers that if, quote, the department does not proceed, they're prepared to enforce current Idaho code, including by litigation if necessary. They hope it won't be the case, but we'll see. Long from a finished story.
Article 1, Section 10 gives us the right, as a sovereign state, to take care of our own borders and our own land. These are our people, this is our land, and it's our duty and job to protect it.
In terms of finishing the story, the topic of immigration appears to be top of the agenda for 2025. Idaho lawmakers brought two major proposals in the final days of the session, House Bill 753 and 756. 753 basically makes it illegal for a quote-unquote alien to be in Idaho without the proper paperwork. 756, meanwhile, puts in Idaho code a ban on knowingly hiring an illegal immigrant. It also says that they are going to add the crime human smuggling for a person who knowingly and willfully transport into the state a person who has entered the United States in violation of law. Both bills generated a lot of conversation and great debate, but both of them actually got stuck in the State House. So we will see them next year, most likely.
It's going to change the trajectory of their future and their children's future and every generation after that. Just like when I went to school, I was a first-generation graduate.
Finally, after much anticipation, debates, backroom trades, whatever you want to call them, funding for Governor Little's Idaho launch program finally cleared the Idaho House and Senate. There were concerns that maybe lawmakers wouldn't fund it based on principle, but in the end, the program to get graduating seniors grant money to help pay for college is a go. And the goal and requirement of this program, get Idaho students into in-demand careers. Governor Little has now officially signed the bill, so yeah, they're ready for launch. Speaking of the governor, phones are ringing at the State House, specifically in the governor's office. House Bill 710 is still waiting for a final decision from Governor Little. And House Bill 710, also known as the library bill. In short, it requires public school and community libraries to take reasonable steps to restrict children's access to obscene or harmful materials. So basically, libraries, they need to move their questionable content or challenged content out of general sections or children's sections and put them in a restricted area. And the penalty phase is where we saw trouble with the legislation last year. You may recall Governor Little, he vetoed the library bill in 2023, which is really controversial. Critics thought that the 2023 version went way too far because it included thousands of dollars in potential penalties. So the 2024 version says that any minor, parent, or legal guardian who wins the legal action, if they were to challenge and they say that, oh, well, a book or harmful material wasn't taken care of appropriately in this law, they would win $250 rather than thousands like we saw last year. Bill sponsor thinks that it will pass this year, though. Says that he worked a little bit with Governor Little on it.
Yeah, I think that he's going to support this one. I feel very strong about that.
Okay, short and to the point, so I guess we will see. I mentioned a moment ago the phones. That's right. There are two very active campaigns on diametrically different sides that are calling the governor's office. One calling to say, hey, please sign this bill. The other one saying, whatever you do not do this. So I actually checked in with the governor's office, and the latest numbers for you via email. 71 people reached out supporting the library bill, 3,508 against. In terms of phone calls, almost 1,500 people called in against it, 518 supporting. So in terms of emails and phone calls, you could actually say thousands of more people, based on those statistics, seem to have a different idea than, well, what the lawmakers did. Sticking with politics, strong disapproval. That is the feeling from the Ada County Republican Central Committee on Idaho Representative James Petzke. Like we've seen in other areas of Idaho, the Ada County Central Committee, they have now passed an official resolution to say they don't like how Representative Petzke handled his work on the Joint Finance and Appropriations Committee. As shared on Twitter by a member of the Ada County Republican Central Committee, the Ada team says that Petzke broke with GOP values in his disagreements on how JFAC should be doing their work. As we covered in depth, JFAC actually went to a brand new process this year. Some lawmakers, though, including Representative Petzke, they had concerns with the process, and they opted to actually go back to the old process during a meeting in February. Well, that situation jammed up the legislature for a full week, but in the end, lawmakers continued with the new JFAC process. Ada County Republican Central Committee, though, they say that, quote, they support any action which other entities or committees within the Idaho Republican Party may choose to bring against Representative James Petzke in order to defend and promote conservative Republican Party values and the Idaho Republican Party platform. So what's this all about? What are they referring to? Well, the committee believes that Representative Petzke broke with a campaign filing statement to the Republican Party in 2022. And in that, he said that he would take a strong, fiscally conservative approach to government. We've seen this type of action before, but what does it actually mean? Time will tell, but I have seen your questions about loyalty statements or some type of paperwork that lawmakers sign or fill out, committing to be a conservative lawmaker for the Conservative Party, the Republicans. And I came across what you're going to see right here online, and I thought maybe you'll find it interesting. This is not overly news value, but in terms of just information, what I'm showing you here is this is integrity and affiliation form posted by Middleton Senator Tammy Nichols. And basically, it asks GOP lawmakers to review the Constitution of Idaho and the party platform. From there are two options to pick on the form. You can mark by the first one saying that you agree to both the platform and the Constitution with no notes. And then the second one says, yes, I agree with the Constitution and the party platform, except for the issues that I list below. And then a candidate can go into more detail on that sheet. The document finishes up saying that the person signing it will be evaluated in their role as a public office holder based on performance that is checked against the party platform and the Constitution. So that's just how it works, just showing you a little bit of insight that you might have not seen before. I will say this, we're going to dive into this more next week, scheduled to sit down with Representative Petzke on Monday. So with the election coming up, the GOP and Dem enter the primary elections, I wanted to call them, in about a month in May. We'll see how situations like this kind of unfold. And speaking of the 2024 primary election right around the corner, here it is, May 21st. Voters across the state, they will head to the polls to vote for all 105 seats in the Idaho legislature. That's right, all senators, representatives up for election. And the winners of the primary elections, the inter-party races, they will advance to be on your November general election ballot on November 5th. So right now, Idaho Secretary of State Phil McGrain, he says that absentee ballots, the first batch, they are headed out to your mailboxes. He says the first batch of absentee ballots have been mailed and that you should be keeping an eye out for them if you've requested one. If you haven't, but you want to vote absentee, you have until May 10th to request a ballot, and you can do that at voteidaho.gov. We will be right back here on the 208.
The pinnacle moment for the monument came on March 29th. 13 peaceful protesters were paraded away and charged with resisting and obstructing officers.
It's unbelievably tragic. It is so tragic that this monument was removed.
Within minutes, the monument would make its way up Capitol Boulevard to be replanted at its new home in front of St. Michael's Cathedral on State Street.
We just marked the anniversary of the 10 Commandments statue being moved from downtown Boise to a new location, and got a lot of good comments and questions and all kinds of stuff about that story that we wanted to share. Like this one we'll start with from Scott. Hashtag the 208. The city should have sold a 10 by 10 area surrounding the cross at the park to the church, making it private property like they did with the cross on Table Rock. It's a good point. Or Ken, who said, what about the cross on Table Rock? People wondering why that's allowed to stay, but the commandments needed to move. Well, Table Rock also has a history of controversy, including, lawsuits over the separation of church and state. Where did the cross come from, or where does any of this date to? Well, the idea for the cross, it actually came from a 1950s TV show called This Is Your Life. And there was an episode where one of the characters has a dream of building a giant cross to overlook their town. Thus, the cross on Table Rock was inspired and born. In 1956, the Junior Chamber of Commerce, also known as the JCs, they built the cross for almost $900 just to promote Christianity. According to the Idaho Architecture Project, it was built on land that was owned by the Idaho Department of Correction. So it's often been the center of controversy, with some seeing it as a beacon of faith and devotion and Christianity, while others argue that it shows a lack of separation between church and state, and not everyone in the valley wants to see that. But in 1971, the JCs petitioned the Board of Corrections to buy a small amount of land around the cross so that they could put it on private property. The Board of Corrections gave the land to the Idaho Board of Lands, who then auctioned it off to the JCs. In the JCs, they bought a 44 by 70-foot parcel around the cross for $100. Unlike the Ten Commandments, the cross, 60 feet tall, 45,000 pounds, still stands on top of Table Rock despite multiple lawsuits and acts of vandalism over the years. Preservation Idaho says that although the iconic landmark remains controversial, for many locals, it, quote, represents the peaceful and loving community in which they reside. 2:08, we'll be right back.
Rain is still coming down across Treasure Valley area. As you can see in this view from Boise, still looking quite soggy. Probably not the best night to be out and about downtown as we expect these showers to continue. Overall, as we look through the weekend, we will be seeing some more sunshine in the distant view. However, those showers look to continue tonight for mountain areas, specifically west central mountains. We'll be expecting more snow. And then we even have a rain-snow mix expected for valleys once again tomorrow morning. But then things dry out a little bit more on Sunday, even though the mountains will see some isolated snow showers. So here's what's going on the radar right now. You can see how consistent some of those showers have been over valley locations. And these have been fueled in part by a low pressure center. And I wanted to show you how interesting this is. You can see a lot of that rotation right over there in the northern part of Nevada. So this low pressure center will continue to nudge north and mostly move east as we go into the evening. So that could make for some interesting developments as we go throughout the night, some higher precipitation rates maybe than what models are hinting at right now. So I'll continue to watch that for you. We see some scattered showers as we go into Saturday, and then we see things start to taper off a little bit drier on Sunday. But you can see lots of warming ahead in your 7-day forecast.
Well, technically in the forecast on Monday, millions and millions of people will get the chance to see a total solar eclipse. Solar eclipse happens when the sun and the moon and the earth, they are perfectly aligned. So the moon passes between Earth and the sun, and it temporarily blocks the sun's light and casts a shadow on Earth. A total solar eclipse like the one on Monday, it's when the moon fully obscures the sun. A A partial eclipse means only part of the sun's face is blocked, and that's what we'll see here in Idaho. And it's a bit of a drive for us Idahoans, but NASA says more than 31 million people live in what's called the path of totality, and that's where the total eclipse will be visible as long as there's no cloud cover. Another 150 million people live within 200 miles of that path. We're not out of luck, though, because people living outside of the path, you'll get a nice little show, that partial eclipse coming up on Monday. But how long will the eclipse last? Well, it depends on the location you live in. But some spots will see the moon fully cover the sun for about 4.5 minutes. It's a rare sight, and millions of people there are already traveling to new areas so they can get a better view. State of emergencies, they've been declared in several parts of the U.S. as state and local officials, they try to free up resources as they anticipate a lot of people coming to their area. And as you may recall, this isn't the first time this has happened, of course. A solar eclipse has been visible within the U.S. several times, but most recently in 2017, the path of totality, it stretched across most of our country. You can see it there. And that included Idaho, specifically Weiser, Idaho. And the preparation then was much the same to address concerns about public safety, financial damage, labor costs, and cleanup, anything you can think of. Washington County commissioners, they passed an emergency declaration to help free up some extra funds. Weiser, Idaho, population of about 5,500. But this weekend, that population is going to double or even possibly triple for everybody coming into town for the total solar eclipse. It's been more than a year of anticipation in this small Idaho town, but tomorrow, the day finally comes here, the path of totality for one of the most anticipated eclipses of the modern century. It's Sunday afternoon, and downtown Weiser is starting to get busy. The locals say it's not overwhelming, but they know more people are on their way right now.
We're ready for whatever comes, quite honestly.
Weiser Mayor Diana Thomas says the energy around town is very positive now that the big day is almost here.
There came a time early last week where they were getting a little nervous because of some of the reports, but since it started and seeing how it's come together, I think they're very comfortable with it. I think they're enjoying it.
How long have you been waiting to watch this?
About my whole life.
Weiser local Riker Mickelroy may be on the younger side, but he's on the same page with most of the people here.
Weiser, Idaho, we decided to come up here to see the eclipse. You only get to see that maybe once in your lifetime.
Of course, the total solar eclipse is the main event Monday. But before that, there's a lot to see here.
And we love the town.
At Memorial Park, Marianne McFarland and her family are one of dozens of vendors cashing in on Eclipse Mania.
The glasses sold out in Salt Lake. Right now, the shirts are flying off.
McFarland works as an occupational therapist in Utah. But this weekend, though, her job's all about pushing products.
Whether or not we sell out, we've had a blast.
And, of course, enjoying the eclipse.
We found Weiser to be a really welcoming place to be.
Michael Rossi and his friends and family drove from San Francisco to be in the path of totality at Weiser High School. Rossi says after hearing about the tough winter Weiser had, he wanted to get out here and support the community.
We intentionally didn't come up with food or didn't come up with anything because we just knew we just had to come in and let them take care of us.
The talk of the town Sunday night is the traffic into town, but everyone agrees so far so good.
We aren't having the crowds and the traffic problems they stated. It may get heavier, but there's still room for more people, so we hope you'll come and enjoy the community.
We'll be live right here next to Weiser High School starting tomorrow morning at 5 a.m. So join us all morning to get a preview of the total solar eclipse, and make sure to follow us on social media for the big preparations of what's going on right here in Weiser. Reporting in Weiser, Idaho, Joe Paris, Idaho's News Channel 7. Get that kid a comb. Okay, if you did plan to go check it out on Monday, though, know that it's not safe to look directly at the sun ever, even when it's a partly or mostly covered by the moon. But to prevent any injury to your eyes, NASA, they say you should wear the special Eclipse sunglasses, and many different companies sell them. There are actually some in some local stores here, but there are fakes out there as well. So make sure that yours are legit. Take a look at the lens first, and they should have a silver look on the outside and be black on the inside. Should also be able to find a code inside, something like IS123132. You can just, I don't know, send us one if you have a question. But you can order them online, or you can get them in stores here. But just make sure they're not fake before you look up into the sun. Oh, and one last thing. This is actually the last time you'll be able to see a total solar eclipse until 2044. We'll finish up the show after this. Well, thanks for being with us here all week. It's been a fun time on the 208. Let's wrap up with some comments. We'll start with this. This person says, why do we elect these people in Congress when they vote what the party or the lobbyists tell them instead of the people who elected them? I thought we are a democracy instead of a dictatorship. That's Jim in Mountain Home. And several of you actually had the same types of comments asking, do lawmakers vote for the constituents, for the party, or for themselves? I'll just tell you, it depends on the lawmaker. Maybe a good question for us to look into. This person says, personally, I appreciate a legislator who is able to think for himself and doesn't just take the party line, right or wrong. I voted for Petzke the first time he ran. I'll vote for him again. That's Laura in Meridian. So some folks really like their lawmakers kind of breaking with the party. This person says, what's the definition of it's the Idaho way when justifying a piece of controversial legislation? I couldn't tell you. It depends on the day of the week and which way the winds are directed. So good question. This person says, my granddaughter convinced me flying out to Texas, Fort Worth, Dallas area to watch the eclipse with her mom. That's awesome. And then finally, Joe, you're a cute kid. Yeah, 2017. Boy, time flies. All right, have a great weekend, everyone.